I will build a duplex to live with my parents, and you will have to help me out with $100,000.
You don't have any veto power. What belongs to my daughter-in-law is ours, isn't it? My husband and in-laws have said so, and have tried to build a house on the land I inherited, but I will never let that happen. I told them a fact, but I'm already single. My name's Sarah, and I'm a 34 years old office worker. After graduating from college, I got a job at a securities company and worked hard. I enjoyed my work because the more I did it, the more result I got. So I just spent my days focusing on work, and I found myself being entrusted with a good position. I was making a lot of money and had a lot of savings now. I was satisfied with my life and thought I was having a very fulfilling time. However, I suddenly realized that all my friends around me were getting married and having children. I felt like I was being left behind, seeing their families happily getting along. And my parents have been asking me a lot about my recent tendencies.
Is there anyone out there who is good enough for you? I think it's great that you work so hard at your job and that you are able to get results. But there is also something to be said about being happy as a woman.
Yes, I get it.
Sarah, I'm serious.
If I could get married so easily, I wouldn't have a hard time.
Well, that's true.
My father started talking to me about marriage whenever we saw each other. One day, when he was not around, I asked my mother about it. Why is Dad rushing me to get married lately? You know, his health hasn't been so good lately. Huh? Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. He is worried about you because he has come to believe that he could die at any moment. Because as a father, he wants his child to be happy. I guess he also wants to see you as a bride or see his grandchildren. I see. I was surprised because I didn't know my father had such circumstances. And I strongly wanted to get married and show my father and mother how happy I am. However, as I had been devoting myself to my work without much attention to my love life, I didn't know how to find new encounters. Where do people find their partners? When I was wondering this, a friend of mine suggested I attend a blind date party. I had never been on a blind date before, but I thought it would be an experience and decided to attend. It seemed like I would never meet anyone if I didn't make an active move like that. It was my first time attending a blind date party, but it was more fun than I had expected. I was worried that it would be more of a meeting place for men and women, and that the atmosphere among the women might be a bit tense. But it was more like a drinking party, and I was able to enjoy talking with both men and women. The men and women were all very kind and nice, and the conversation was lively no matter who was next to whom. Then, we all exchanged contact information with each other, and one of the men contacted me individually. That was Jason. Jason was 29 years old, 5 years younger than me. I think he was the youngest of all the participants at the party. He was also good looking and was very popular among the other women. I was surprised when he contacted me, but I was even more surprised when I saw the content of his message. He told me that he had enjoyed talking with me so much that he wanted to meet me alone this time. I didn't expect such an invitation from him, but I was very happy, and I immediately agreed to meet with him. We had a great time, and our conversation was very enjoyable. After a few more dates, he asked me to go out with him, and that he thinks about marrying me later. We then decided to start dating. Our relationship was fine, and in no time at all, 6 months had passed. Then one day, Jason said he had something important to discuss and invited me out to dinner. I suddenly became concerned that it might be a breakup. I wondered if I had made him feel uncomfortable or bored because of the age difference between us. I was very scared, but I gathered up my courage and went to the restaurant where I was to meet him. And I was having dinner with him anyway, but I was not in the mood. The meal seems to be the same as before, but I still hadn't heard what the important thing was. Will he talk about a breakup after this meal? Is this the last supper we will take together? If so, I forgot to taste it. I was thinking about that and didn't realize I was being called by name.
Sarah, Sarah, are you listening?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm about to tell you something important, so please listen to me.
I knew he was about to tell me something important, and I braced myself. Then he said,
Sarah, will you marry me? Let's have a life together from now on.
For a moment I did not understand what he was saying. Then finally, after some delay, I understood it in my head. What? Marriage? Seeing my surprise, he anxiously asked me if I would reject. No. I was just a little surprised. I took a deep breath, looked Jason straight in the eye, and replied, I'm very happy to be together with you. Jason looked very happy when I accepted his proposal. I couldn't stop smiling. I had not expected a marriage proposal in such a short period of 6 months of our relationship. So I thought he was completely on the break track. And since I was in such a state, the proposal made me many times happier. Then we reported our marriage to each other's parents. My father and mother were very happy and congratulated us many times. After the wedding greetings and the meeting of both families, we were successfully married. Many of my friends and colleagues congratulated us at the wedding, and I felt my happiness growing. Then, we went on our honeymoon and started our life as husband and wife. My honeymoon with my husband was very happy. I was surprised at how happy I was just to be with the person I loved all the time.
Sarah, welcome home. Dinner is ready.
Oh, thank you. My husband always finishes work earlier than me and arrives home before me, and he prepares dinner for me. I used to prepare dinner by myself after coming home from work after a long day of work, and I'm extremely grateful to him for doing that. Thanks to my husband's hard work, I'm able to focus even more on my work. As I ate my husband's home-cooked meals, I felt deeply happy that I had married him. I was able to fulfill one of my filial piety by showing my father how I got to be a bride, and living with my partner was definitely the happiest time of my life. However, I would later come to regret that this marriage was a mistake. The first signs of this began to appear about 6 months after our marriage. One day, I looked at the bank book of our couple's shared account, and there was a withdrawal that I didn't remember. For some reason, $500 had been deducted from our shared account. We put a little money into this account every month, but I had never made a single withdrawal. So my husband was the only one. I was a little worried and asked my husband about it. I don't think it's a good idea to withdraw money without permission. And I don't think it's a good idea to keep quiet about it to your partner. Jason, what did you do with this money? My husband was a little upset when I showed him the bank book.
That's because, well, actually, it seems that Grandpa broke his arm, so I gave him money for his hospitalization and treatment on short notice.
Oh, really?
But I didn't have any money in my account, so I hurriedly took money out of the shared account.
I see.
I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I was going to put it back when I got paid.
I see. That's all right then. But I still wish you would have talked to me about it beforehand or something.
I'm sorry. I will be careful next time.
He said and apologized repeatedly, so I decided to forgive him for the time being. However, after that, my husband regularly withdrew money from the shared account without my permission. Each time I asked him what he used the money for, he gave me a reasonable excuse, but I gradually became suspicious of him. Then, I couldn't stand it any longer and went a little hard on my husband. Hey, you're spending too much money on your own, don't you think? And Jason, you don't put money into the shared account at all anymore. I want you to explain to me what's going on, because if you don't, I won't be able to trust you anymore. When I said this angrily, my husband started to get upset.
I'm using the money for our family. The money in our shared account is ours to begin with. So what's wrong with me spending it?
I'm not saying you shouldn't spend it. I'm saying don't spend it on your own.
I told you, I'm using it to pay for Grandpa's medical bills.
Why are you? His grandson paying for it. Isn't it supposed to be paid for by your mother or father?
Well, that's...
Don't try to cover it up with a lie. When I said that, my husband was driven into a corner and suddenly said something outrageous.
Then, do you want a divorce?
What? Divorce?
If you doubt me that much, it will be difficult to continue our marriage.
Wait a minute. I'm not thinking that much about divorce.
Then be a little nicer to me. I'm spending the money in our shared account, and I'm sorry for that too.
Okay. I was still in love with my husband at this time, and I didn't want to get a divorce because then I wouldn't be able to show my parents their grandchildren's faces. However, I would later regret that I should have divorced him quickly at that time. Since then, my husband has become a little cold toward me. He used to prepare dinner for me, but he stopped doing housework. And lately, when I come home, more often than ever, my in-laws are there. Molly and Ronald, what is going on with you? I'm here to see my son. Is it a bad thing?
Sarah, how can you work till late while we are here? Did you not want to see us?
No, it's not like that.
She's a workaholic. She's also a tightwad when it comes to money. Well, that's an apt description.
My in-laws laughing at me and making fun of me. I was fed up with the situation where I came home from work and my in-laws were there. This would still be better if I worked more overtime and came home just before the last train. After that, my in-laws would come over to my house and my husband would have a friendly chat with them. I also thought it was kind of weird because as soon as I come home from work, they will leave as if this is a sign.
My mom and dad would leave quickly because you always looked so uncomfortable.
I was shocked when he really said something like that to me. Was it my fault? I'm just working hard. Why should I be told such a thing? I was starting to get pretty stressed out over my husband's attitude and my in-laws' attitude. Besides, while I was working so hard, my husband was having a nice conversation at home with his parents, who came home before me. Just thinking about that made me feel really angry. Furthermore, since I'm currently paying for all of our living expenses, I'm also responsible for the utilities and food that my in-laws spend when they're at our home relaxing on their own. There were many things that I didn't agree with, and I was beginning to wonder if I should continue living this marriage life. Then, an event occurred that gnawed at my heart. It was the death of my father. My father suddenly collapsed from acute heart failure and passed away. It was so sudden that my mind went blank. Even when I saw him in the hospital with a white cloth over his face, I still couldn't believe that he had passed away. I couldn't show him his grandchildren. and my mother and I were saddened. I had heard that he had been in good condition recently, even though his health had been getting worse. Then, I was suddenly told that he had passed away, and my emotions were not able to catch up. But despite of my grief, I knew that I had to make sure my father's funeral was held properly. I hurriedly made arrangements in preparation for the funeral, and somehow managed to hold my father's funeral without incident. Then, afterward, the lawyer explained to me about the inheritance. He told me that my father had made a will in preparation for the eventuality of his death when he became ill. In his will, my father left me and my mother a share of his savings, and I was to inherit the land of my parents' house. I wasn't that concerned about the inheritance, but my husband and in-laws, not me, were extremely agitated about the inheritance.
Sarah, is it true that you inherited the land?
Yes, that's right.
That's great. Then let's build a house.
Why?
Because you inherited the land. Then let's tear down your stale parents' house and build a new one. And we'll make it a duplex and live with my mom and dad.
Wait, what are you talking about? I'm not going to do that. The land is mine, but my mother still lives in the house.
Why don't you just say something nice and ask her to move somewhere else?
Don't be silly. There's no way I could do such a terrible thing.
What the hell? We are a couple. You could at least listen to me a little bit.
Every single time you ask me for something, it's too much.
I'm not asking you to do anything unreasonable. Living with my parents and building a new house, those are two things I'm asking for. Nothing too hard.
I'm saying that's unreasonable. I didn't think my husband could be this difficult to talk to. But I would never let him build a house. I had thought of various countermeasures, but my husband was tougher than I had expected. He brought his parents to our house every day and told me that he was going to build a two-family house with the three of them. They also showed me materials they had obtained from a real estate agent and seems to be steadily preparing to build a house. Then, perhaps out of frustration, his attitude toward me became stricter and stricter.
Come on, we are asking you to build a house so many times. Just get on with it and start getting the house ready to be built.
You are too slow to act.
No, I don't approve.
I don't care what you approve or disapprove of. You married Jason. You do what he says.
It's really hard for me to keep listening to them yell at me like this when I come home tired from work. But I don't leave it at that. I'm secretly making preparations. Then one day, my husband and in-laws must have gotten impatient because they tried to subdue me by raising their voices and looking even scarier than usual.
I'm going to build a two-family house to live with my parents, and I want you to help me with $100,000.
You don't have any veto power.
We are already on the verge of moving forward with a real estate agent.
What belongs to my daughter-in-law is ours, isn't it?
My husband and in-laws have said so, and have tried to build a house on the land I inherited. But I will never let that happen. I told them a fact, but I'm already single.
What are you talking about?
My in-laws are upset by my statement. Jason, have you forgotten that you stuck divorce papers in my face? You have been shoving filled out divorce papers in my face lately when things don't go your way. I have filed them. I'm sick of you threatening to build a house on my inherited land. So I let you become strangers to me. Then the land will no longer be any of your business.
Bullshit. I don't accept that.
That's right. That divorce is null and void.
I will sue you for divorcing without permission.
The in-laws were furious with me, but I couldn't lose. I'm sorry, but divorce is final because Jason, you're having an affair.
Me? What are you talking about?
You don't have to be so defensive. I had the credit agency investigate, and I got a bunch of pictures of you bringing a woman into my house during the day. I also found out that you quit your job without my knowledge. No wonder you've been spending all the money on the shared account. But I'm going to make you pay for it. I'm going to make sure you pay alimony for the affair. My husband and my in-laws became pale and lost their words. For now, can you just pack up your stuff and leave? This apartment is rented in my name. If you continue to stay here, I will call the police.
Wait a minute. Police?
From my point of view, it's more disturbing to have strangers in my house. I said that and took my phone and made it easy to understand. Let's see, it was 911. I said. Then my husband and in-laws rushed out of the house. I immediately locked the door. After that, I filed a claim for alimony against my husband and the adulterer through a lawyer. I also canceled the apartment I was living in with my husband, and I returned to my parents' house and started living with my mother. Then, I rebuilt my parents' house with the inheritance I received from my father and the money I had saved. The house was made barrier-free so that it would be easy for my mother to live in even if she became old and her legs and hips deteriorated. And the other rooms were also made new and comfortable for her. My mother was very happy with the new house, and I was also happy to see her like that. By the way, my ex-husband and in-laws are now spending their days in a state of isolation, not being taken seriously by anyone around them. They had been bragging to the neighbors that they were going to build a new two-family house, but as a result, they were abandoned by me. There was no more talk about the new house. And then, word spread about my ex-husband's infidelity, so the neighbors are giving them the cold shoulder. Furthermore, my ex-husband has already quit his job, so my in-laws are now paying the alimony that my ex-husband has to pay every month on his behalf, while supporting him who doesn't work. I feel sorry for them, but I also feel good about it because they were the ones who have directly caused me pain. I'm going to take their example as a lesson to me and try to live my life honestly and find happiness in an independent state. It's tricky because it's hard to tell the difference between truly nice people and people who pretend to be nice at first before they approach you and reveal their true nature. I thought it was wonderful that Sarah was resolute in talking back to her in-laws. It's also great that she hired a credit agency to uncover her husband's infidelity. Now that you were able to cut off the troublesome people, I hope you can meet a wonderful man this time and have a new happy marriage. I wish Sarah all the best for the rest of her life and all the happiness in the world. Lucia, are you here again?
You don't have veto power. A daughter-in-law is still a daughter-in-law, even if her husband is gone. You are my slave for life. I will use you well.
My mother-in-law laughed high when she said this. Apparently, she's misunderstanding something, so I decided to tell her. My name is Lily. I'm a 30-year-old housewife. My husband James and I have been married for 3 years. We used to be seniors and juniors in our company, and my husband was 2 years older than me. He worked very hard to teach me his job as a trainer, and I became more and more attracted to him. After that, my days were soaked in work for a while, that I could not devote much time to romance. But after 3 years had passed since I joined the company, he and I started working on a project together, and we quickly grew closer. During and after the project, we started going out for drinks after work together. And then, we started to go out on weekends as well. And that was the start of our relationship. 2 years after we started dating, he proposed to me and we got married. Upon our marriage, I retired from my job and became a full-time housewife. My husband was a successful businessman and had already become a section manager with a high salary, and I quit my job because I wanted to experience being a full-time housewife for once. We were very happy as newlyweds, and I enjoyed the time I spent cooking for my husband. My husband always eats my cooking with a smile on his face and says it is delicious, which makes it worthwhile. I also prepared his lunchbox every day, and he shows me his empty lunchbox, saying how delicious it was. My husband was so adorable that I put all my effort into cooking for him every day. On our days off, we would go for drives, enjoy our dates, and spend really happy days together. But even such a happy married life has its problems. And for me, it was my mother-in-law.
Lily, why don't you come to visit me? Normally, if you're a housewife, you would show up at your husband's parents' house every day to do housework, wouldn't you?
I've never heard of such a thing before. Sorry, but Lucia, are you still in good health, aren't you? I have my hands full doing the daily chores at our own house, so it is difficult for me to show up at your place every day. When I said this, Lucia glared at me.
Are you trying to talk back to me, even though you're my daughter-in-law? What kind of upbringing have you received from your parents?
I was offended by her words. I don't think my parents had anything to do with it. In the first place, Lucia, you suddenly came to our house without any appointment like this just now. I don't think that's a very sensible thing to do. What kind of upbringing did you have? I'm actually a pretty strong-willed person. So whenever my mother-in-law said something to me, I would talk back like this.
What a cocky daughter-in-law you are. I can't believe someone like you married James.
We are married, even if you don't believe us.
I say this and you say that. That's enough. I'm leaving.
I didn't invite you, so please feel free to leave. My mother-in-law left, looking frustrated because I was so firm in my retort. But one day, my mother-in-law did something terrible to bring me down. It was one New Year's Day, when I was at my parents-in-law's house, and there was a gathering of relatives. My mother-in-law asked me to help her prepare the food for the feast with her.
Lily, I want you to make the first thing you serve everyone.
Okay. I was told to do so, and I prepared carpaccio for the number of people that would go well with wine. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law prepared the main course and other dishes. I had finished the carpaccio and wanted to help her prepare the other dishes, but she said,
all we have to do now is to serve the food we bought or got delivered. So please help Connor.
She kicked me out of the kitchen. I had imagined that my mother-in-law would have me do a lot of cooking while she looked down on me. But I was surprised to find that I was not burdened with as much work as I had expected. After that, my father-in-law, my husband, and I cleaned up the house, prepared the table, and waited for the relatives to arrive. When everyone had arrived, I set the table with enough alcohol for the number of people under my mother-in-law's direction. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law served the carpaccio I had prepared.
Please have this one first. This one was made by my daughter-in-law, Lily.
My mother-in-law said so, and the relatives were like, thank you, and tried some. But the next moment, they started talking like,
it's too spicy. What the heck is this? It's spicy.
Huh? I didn't know what happened, but all my relatives were saying it was spicy and looked not well. That can't be true, I thought. Then I took a bite of my carpaccio and found that it was very spicy, just as my relatives said. It tasted as if Tabasco had been poured on it. I hadn't seasoned it in any way, so the culprit was my mother-in-law. When I looked at my mother-in-law, she was smiling at me.
This tastes too pungent for old people like us. Sorry, Lily. Can you take it away, please?
One by one, the relatives put down their carpaccio and guzzled their beer to get rid of the spiciness.
I'm sorry my daughter-in-law seems to have screwed this up. She's not very good at cooking.
My mother-in-law says to the relatives with a victorious look on her face.
I'm worried about whether James is getting a proper meal.
The relatives look at my husband with wry smiles, but James looks pouty.
Lily always cooks very good food. I'm sure this is spicy, but she just happened to fail only this time. The food she usually cooks is really good, so much so that I always come home without going out for a drink.
My husband helped me like this, but his relatives were skeptical. Some of them were skeptical that my husband's sense of taste was not right. Even if I had told my mother-in-law had put Tabasco in the dish, it was more likely that my mother-in-law would say that I only tried to blame Lucia. So I had to put up with it as it was done to me. I'm sure that James' relatives would have perceived me as a wife who is not a good cook. I left the New Year's gathering feeling very frustrated. My mother-in-law's triumphant face makes me angry, even when I remember it now. Then my mother-in-law came over to my house again during the day and laughed about what happened at New Year's.
You really are a terrible cook.
Lucia, that was your doing, right?
What are you talking about? Do you have any proof that I did anything?
There's no proof, but I could definitely taste the peppers.
I knew you were a bad cook. It was Tabasco.
It was Tabasco? I didn't know that.
Oh yes, about 30 drops of Tabasco that I had at home.
You just confessed you put it in yourself. Lucia got upset when I said that, but she quickly fought back.
Shut up. I did it to humiliate you. But thanks to you, it was a huge success. Everyone now knows that you're a useless wife who can't cook.
That sucks. No matter how much she didn't like me, she went to such lengths to make all her relatives eat spicy food. I was thoroughly disgusted with my mother-in-law. I immediately reported this to my husband. My husband was furious and called my mother-in-law.
Mom, what are you acting like a child? There is no way you are going to bring our relatives into this and embarrass them just because my wife talked back to you.
My husband was so fierce that he confronted my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law's voice on the phone was trembling.
I was trying to give my cocky daughter-in-law a good scolding.
Lily didn't do anything wrong. As far as I'm concerned, I think you're rather worse than Lily.
Oh no! Even you say such things?
Please don't do anything to hurt Lily anymore. The next time you come to my house without permission, I will cut off the ties between you and me.
All right, I got it. So please don't say that.
My mother-in-law seems to become anxious because my husband even told her he was going to cut ties with her. And because of that, she no longer comes storming into my house to pick on me. James, thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't realize it until this happened.
I'm sorry it took me so long to talk to you about it. It was nice to know that my husband was on my side no matter what. From then on, we had a very peaceful and calm day. I didn't realize how much less stressful it would be if my mother-in-law just didn't come to my house. However, while I was spending happy days with my husband again, something very sad happened. My husband had a car accident and lost his life. It was so sudden that I could not catch up with my emotions. I was so sad that I had no memory of the funeral. I could not accept the reality that my husband was gone. It was after 2 months that I finally began to feel at peace. Although I sometimes felt my chest tighten with sadness and loneliness at the loss of my husband, I was still able to go about my daily life. But then, my mother-in-law came back into my life.
Hey, Lily, where have you been wandering around?
Lucia, what are you doing here? To my surprise, my mother-in-law was waiting for me in front of my apartment.
What were you doing out this late at night?
I was working.
Work? Have you forgotten about James and are you just going about your daily life?
Well, I have to work to earn a living.
So you didn't love him after all?
Huh?
You married James because he's good at work and gives you money.
What are you talking about? I love James, and I'm still sad about the loss of my beloved husband.
If that were the case, you wouldn't be working just because 2 months has passed.
What kind of logic is that? Come on.
Shut up. Let me in the house anyway.
Why should I let you in my house?
You. Are you going to reject your own mother-in-law?
I didn't want to let my mother-in-law in the house, but I thought that was indeed a terrible idea, so I had no choice but to let her in.
There is dust on James' picture.
I was just about to clean it up when I got home.
Don't lie to me like that. You didn't do anything.
That's not true. I clean it regularly.
I don't believe you.
I immediately regretted that I let my mother-in-law in the house. My mother-in-law is constantly abusing me. I'm fed up with her awfulness as usual.
I knew you are a terrible cook.
Lucia, how long are you going to stay here?
I'm your mother-in-law, so you shouldn't mind if I stay longer.
No, but...
Don't think that just because James passed away, we're not going to end our relationship.
My mother-in-law looked so proud of herself.
I will be back again.
What did she mean by again? Why does my mother-in-law need to visit me so many times? I was extremely anxious. Even though I was not mentally well yet, the added stress of my mother-in-law was quite hard on me. And sure enough, my mother-in-law came again the next day. Lucia, you came again?
You don't have the right to veto anything, so just let me in.
I knew I had to protect myself, so I didn't let my mother-in-law in the house.
Let me in, you little brat.
My mother-in-law kept knocking on the door, but I ignored her. Eventually, the knocking stopped, and she seems to have given up. So now, she started to intercom repeatedly during the day on my days off. Each time, the intercom would ring inside the house, and it was really loud. Moreover, sometimes a courier or someone else would come in, so I had to check who it was every time. Also, when I let the delivery person in, my mother-in-law came inside the apartment with him. And then, saying that I'm her relative, she comes into my room without my permission while I'm signing for the delivery. Hey Lucia, please don't break into my apartment without permission.
It's okay. I'm not related to you. Even if my son is gone, my daughter-in-law is still my daughter-in-law. You're my slave for life, and I will give you a job.
Saying that, my mother-in-law laughs out loud. But don't you need to take care of Connor?
I don't have a problem if I don't take care of him for a little while. He's about to die anyway.
That's terrible. In fact, my father-in-law has been suffering from a limp for about a year now, and is in need of nursing care. I was told that my mother-in-law is taking care of him, but considering the fact that she keeps coming to my house like this, I worry that he's not being taken care of at all. No matter what, I have to stop my mother-in-law from coming to this house again and again. So I thought about if there is anything I can do to stop her. So I decided to ask my lawyer friend. Then, she gave me an advice. That way, I would not have to worry about my mother-in-law following me around. And my mother-in-law came again, without learning her lesson.
Lily, here I am again. Let me in and get me some coffee and snacks.
My mother-in-law says this over the intercom, grinning at me. I won't let you in the house anymore. I'm already a stranger to you.
What are you talking about? I told you before, even if my son died, my daughter-in-law is still my daughter-in-law, which means we are family.
I told my mother-in-law, who is misunderstanding something, a certain fact. I'm sorry, but I'm no longer married to James.
No, that's not true. You can't get a divorce. You are still married.
Have you ever heard of something called a marriage termination certificate? You don't know, right? A termination of marital status notification is a divorce from your spouse after the death of your spouse, legally severing your relationship with your in-laws, or for me, Lucia and Connor. I have filed that notification, so I'm now a stranger to you.
Huh? I don't approve of that. First of all, you can't submit such a thing without my permission.
No, I can submit it as long as I'm willing. It doesn't matter whether you approve or not. In other words, I have no more obligation to let you in my house only because I'm related to you, and I had no choice to back them.
Don't be silly. Just let me in.
Give up and leave. If you insist on staying any longer, I will call the police.
The police?
My ex-mother-in-law reacted to the word police. That's right. A complete stranger is persistently pressing the intercom. So it's no wonder I would think you're a stalker.
Stalker?
Please leave now. If you don't leave within 10 seconds, I will call the police. 10, 9, 8.
Wait a minute. I'm leaving.
Saying this, my mother-in-law hurriedly opened the entrance door and left the apartment entrance. Apparently, the word police had quite an effect. However, my sanctions and retribution against my mother-in-law did not end. In fact, I recorded a few conversations with my mother-in-law during her frequent visits. I had recorded her saying that my father-in-law was going to die anyway. There was also an audio recording of my mother-in-law confessing to putting Tabasco in my carpaccio at the family gathering, which I thought I would never have a chance to use. I sent the data to my father-in-law. Although my father-in-law has a limp, he can use a computer, so he does email and play music and videos in his room. When I sent the audio data, my father-in-law seems to have listened to it immediately and called me right away.
I'm sorry about everything my wife has done to you until now. Leave the rest to me. Also, I heard that you filed for termination of marital relations, and I think you made the right decision. I'm going to end my marital relationship with that stupid woman too.
My father-in-law laughed and hung up the phone. After that, my father-in-law was so furious with my mother-in-law that he confronted her with the divorce papers. My mother-in-law was pale when she heard the voice data I had sent to my father-in-law. And when she was divorced, she cried and begged him not to abandon her. If she was going to beg him like that, I wish he hadn't said anything bad about my father-in-law from the beginning. Well, I guess people who are not very smart don't understand such things. Then, my father-in-law kicked out my mother-in-law and even talked to his relatives to clear up the misunderstanding about the carpaccio at that time. After Connor divorced Lucia, Connor sold the house and went into a nursing home. My father-in-law has been nice to me all the time, so I regularly showed up at the facility to give him updates about me. My father-in-law seems to be happy when I come to see him, and he says that the facility takes better care of him than when he lived with my mother-in-law at home, and his health is better than before. As for my ex-mother-in-law, She was kicked out by my father-in-law, and even more so by her relatives, who cursed her for making them eat spicy food to spite her daughter-in-law. And now she lives a poor and lonely life, working part-time with no one to rely on. It's all self-inflicted, and it's a really nice feeling. I, on the other hand, am now back at the workplace of my former employer and have recently been able to participate in some major projects. I worked hard, remembering the days when I worked with my husband. I think I will continue to work hard for a while and gradually get used to life without my husband. I wonder what kind of nerve she has to come back to pick on her daughter-in-law, even after the death of her own son. Still, it was a relief to see her mother-in-law fall out of line when she was finally sanctioned. I'm glad her father-in-law was on Lily's side. I'm sure Lily won't be completely well yet, but I wish her the best of luck in moving forward and living her life.